Imagine waking before sunrise nearly 100,000 years ago. The campfire has almost burned out. Your hunting group quietly gathers their spears. Today's journey will cover nearly 20 miles, across forests, over rocky hills, through rivers, past cliffs that all seem to look the same. There are no roads, no signs, no maps folded inside a backpack, no compass pointing north, no satellite orbiting overhead. If you become lost, there is no emergency rescue, no phone call, no helicopter, no second chance. Yet this was ordinary life for our ancestors. They crossed entire continents. Some eventually reached Australia, despite stretches of open sea. Others migrated through the frozen landscapes of Siberia. Thousands of years later, humans entered the Americas by following routes that stretched for thousands of miles. Somehow, generation after generation found food, returned to camp, and explored unfamiliar landscapes without any modern navigation technology. How? The answer begins with a remarkable fact. Prehistoric humans probably did not think about navigation the way we do. Today, many people imagine the world as a collection of roads displayed on digital maps. Our ancestors experienced something completely different. The landscape itself became their map. A hunter-gatherer who spent an entire lifetime inside the same region gradually learned every important landmark, every river bend, every cave, every rocky cliff, every ancient tree, every seasonal waterhole, every meadow where animals preferred to graze. Over many years, these locations became connected inside the brain, not as isolated memories, but as one enormous mental landscape. Modern neuroscience has revealed that humans possess specialized brain cells devoted to navigation. Inside a structure called the hippocampus are place cells that become active when we occupy specific locations. Nearby are grid cells that help estimate distance and direction while we move. Together, these systems continuously construct an internal representation of space. Scientists sometimes describe this as a cognitive map. In other words, your brain is constantly building its own invisible map, even when you never look at paper or a screen. This ability is not unique to humans. Honeybees remember the locations of flowers several miles away. Elephants travel hundreds of kilometers between seasonal water sources. Wolves patrol enormous territories without becoming lost. Migratory birds cross entire oceans with astonishing precision. But humans combined this ancient navigation system with something extraordinary: memory, language, planning, and social learning. Instead of remembering only where something was yesterday, our ancestors remembered where berries ripened every spring, where herds usually crossed rivers during autumn, which valleys flooded after heavy rain, which caves stayed warm during winter, which hills offered the best view for spotting predators. Each journey added another layer to an expanding mental map. Imagine living somewhere for 40 years, walking the same valleys, climbing the same hills, following the same rivers through every season. Eventually, every landmark becomes instantly recognizable. A strangely shaped boulder, a broken tree struck by lightning, a narrow canyon entrance, a distant mountain silhouette. These features became natural signposts. Unlike modern street signs, they never needed to be built. Nature had already placed them there. To an outsider, the landscape looked confusing. To the people who lived within it, every feature carried meaning. This explains why experienced hunter-gatherers could travel remarkable distances while appearing to wander almost effortlessly. They were not wandering at all. They were following a map that existed entirely inside the human brain. But even the best mental map has limits. What happened when people traveled beyond familiar territory? Or crossed landscapes they had never seen before? The answer reveals that prehistoric humans learned to read something even more powerful than landmarks. They learned to read nature itself. If prehistoric humans did not carry maps, what guided them once they ventured beyond familiar territory? The answer is astonishingly simple. They learned to read the world itself. Today, many people think of navigation as finding a route on a screen. Our ancestors saw navigation everywhere they looked. The sun was one of their oldest guides. Every morning it rose in roughly the same direction. Every evening it disappeared beyond the opposite horizon. Although its exact position shifted slightly throughout the seasons, those changes followed predictable patterns. Anyone who spent a lifetime outdoors would gradually recognize them. A hunter leaving camp shortly after sunrise could estimate directions simply by observing where the light entered the valley. Later in the day, changing shadows revealed the movement of time as well as orientation. Long before clocks existed, the sky itself measured both. Night brought an entirely different map. As darkness spread across the landscape, thousands of stars emerged. Unlike the random scattering they appear to be, the stars move through remarkably consistent patterns. Entire constellations rise and set at predictable times of the year. In the northern hemisphere, one particular star appears almost fixed in the sky. Today we call it Polaris, the North Star. Although prehistoric people almost certainly did not know its modern name, generations of careful observation would have revealed that it barely moved while the rest of the stars slowly rotated around it. It became one of nature's most reliable reference points. Farther south, where Polaris disappears below the horizon, different stars and constellations served similar purposes. The moon also provided valuable information. Its changing phases helped people estimate the passage of time. Its position across the night sky offered another reference during long journeys. Even without understanding astronomy, our ancestors could recognize repeating celestial patterns simply through observation. But navigation depended on far more than the sky. Rivers were among the most dependable guides on Earth. Water almost always flows downhill. Following a river upstream generally leads toward higher elevations and mountain regions. Traveling downstream often leads toward valleys, lakes, or eventually the sea. For hunter-gatherers, rivers were more than water sources. They were natural highways connecting food, animals, campsites, and neighboring groups. Many prehistoric migrations likely followed river systems for thousands of years. Wind also became an invisible compass. In many parts of the world, seasonal winds blow in remarkably consistent directions. People who hunted, gathered, and traveled outdoors every day would gradually notice these repeating patterns. The smell carried by the wind could reveal even more. Long before the ocean came into view, salty air announced its presence. Smoke drifting across the landscape suggested another campfire somewhere beyond the hills. The scent of flowering plants marked changing seasons. Fresh rain carried the rich smell of damp earth. Every odor became another clue about the surrounding environment. Sound worked the same way. The distant roar of a waterfall could guide travelers toward fresh water long before they could see it. The crashing of ocean waves revealed nearby coastlines hidden behind forests. Certain birds nested only near lakes or rivers. Others gathered along cliffs or shorelines. Even insects produced distinctive sounds that changed between forests, grasslands, and wetlands. To modern ears, these noises often blend into background noise. To experienced hunter-gatherers, they formed an ongoing conversation with the landscape. Animal behavior provided equally valuable information. Large mammals often established trails connecting feeding grounds with water sources. Rather than forcing a path through dense vegetation, humans frequently followed these existing routes. Fresh tracks revealed not only where animals had been, but also where they were likely going. Predators, prey, birds, insects, weather, plants, rivers, mountains, stars, and sunlight all combined into one enormous navigation system. Nothing existed in isolation. Everything provided information. Perhaps the most remarkable difference between ancient and modern navigation is this. Today we often focus on a single device: a phone, a compass, a GPS receiver. Prehistoric humans constantly integrated hundreds of tiny environmental clues at the same time. No single clue was perfect. Together, they painted an extraordinarily accurate picture of where they were. Yet there remained one final ingredient that made all of this possible. It was not found in the sky, or the rivers, or the forests. It existed inside human culture itself. Because the greatest navigation technology ever invented was not a tool. It was shared knowledge. When people imagine prehistoric navigation, they often picture a lone hunter wandering through endless wilderness, somehow finding the correct direction by instinct alone. Reality was probably very different. The greatest navigation tool our ancestors possessed was not sharper eyesight. It was not a stronger sense of smell. It was not even the stars overhead. It was knowledge shared across generations. Every hunter-gatherer child grew up inside a living library. Unlike modern societies, they had no books, no paper, no written maps. Everything important existed inside human memory. Parents taught children where water could still be found during the dry season. Grandparents remembered valleys that flooded after unusually heavy rains. Experienced hunters knew which mountain passes became dangerous during winter. Entire landscapes were memorized through stories, repetition, and daily experience. In many traditional societies that survived into modern times, researchers have discovered astonishing examples of this kind of knowledge. Among Aboriginal Australians, for example, ancient oral traditions known as songlines describe routes stretching hundreds, sometimes even thousands, of kilometers across the continent. Each song encodes landmarks, waterholes, mountain ranges, and important stopping points. As travelers sing the verses in the correct order, they are effectively following a map stored entirely inside memory. The landscape becomes a story. The story becomes a route. Although we cannot know exactly how Paleolithic people organized their knowledge, discoveries like these suggest that oral navigation may have deep evolutionary roots. Stories were far more than entertainment. They were survival technology. A simple tale might describe a dangerous canyon where hunters once encountered lions. Another might explain that a particular spring never dried out, even during years of drought. A legend about a strange rock formation could actually preserve the safest route through unfamiliar hills. Children listening beside evening campfires were learning geography without realizing it. Every story quietly added another landmark to the mental map they were building. Navigation also became far easier because prehistoric humans rarely traveled alone. Most journeys were made in family groups or hunting parties. Older individuals guided younger members. Experienced trackers taught beginners how to recognize subtle changes in animal trails. Knowledge flowed continuously from one generation to the next. Mistakes made by one person became lessons remembered by the entire community. This collective memory gave humans an extraordinary advantage over almost every other animal. An elephant may remember where water is located. A wolf may know the boundaries of its territory. But humans could combine personal experience with the memories of dozens, even hundreds, of other people. Every generation inherited knowledge gathered across countless lifetimes. That is one of the greatest strengths evolution ever gave our species. Modern neuroscience suggests that the human brain evolved not only to remember places, but also to learn from other minds. Language dramatically expanded the amount of information each individual could acquire without personally experiencing every situation. Instead of discovering every river by chance, young hunters could simply ask someone who had already traveled there. Instead of becoming lost in dangerous mountains, they could learn established routes that had been used successfully for centuries. Knowledge accumulated. It did not disappear with each new generation. Over thousands of years, entire migration routes may have been preserved through memory alone. This ability helped humans accomplish something almost no other species has achieved. We spread across nearly every environment on Earth. Dense tropical rainforests, frozen Arctic tundra, high mountain ranges, open deserts, remote islands separated by open water. Each new landscape required different navigation skills, yet the underlying principle remained the same. Observe carefully. Remember accurately. Share what you learn. Perhaps the greatest surprise hidden inside this story is not that prehistoric humans traveled without maps. It is that they hardly needed them. Their brains had already become maps. Their families became libraries. Their stories became guidebooks. Their environment became a living compass. Today, many of us feel anxious the moment a phone battery dies or a GPS signal disappears. Within minutes, some people become uncertain about roads they have driven dozens of times. Psychologists even describe this growing dependence as part of the GPS effect, where heavy reliance on digital navigation may reduce our tendency to actively build detailed mental maps. Our ancestors had no such option. Every journey strengthened the navigation systems inside their own minds. Every successful expedition refined memories that could later save lives. The next time your navigation app calmly tells you to turn left, pause for a moment. For nearly all of human history, there were no satellites orbiting above the Earth, no compasses pointing north, no printed atlases, no glowing blue dots showing your location. Yet millions of people still crossed continents, found their families again, and passed their knowledge to the next generation. Not because they possessed magical instincts, but because evolution built one of the most remarkable navigation systems ever known. It was carried inside the human brain, and for hundreds of thousands of years, it was more than enough.